Electrode is not great in Generation 2. In fact, I'd go as far as saying it's a load of balls. Electrode is one of those challenges I've been putting off for a very long time. I know just how difficult this particular challenge run is, and I have not been looking forward to it. In Generation 1, you get Thunderbolt after defeating Lieutenant Surge, but in Generation 2, you've got to wait all the way after the League to get Thunderbolt, and your only option for Stab before the League is to pay an extortionate amount for the Thunder TM in the game corner, which we're absolutely not going to be doing in this challenge. But every single Pokemon deserves its time in the spotlight, and today it's Electrode. We are level 5 with 19 HP, we're holding a berry and our only move is Tackle. We've got 9 in attack, 11 in defense, 12 in the specials and 16 in speed. So we're a very, very nippy Pokemon, but we have nothing really else going for us, especially because we're not going to be able to take advantage of our special attack until we're in the post-game. Our very first encounter was a wild level 2 Rattata, and really this Rattata should hang its head in shame. It got knocked out by a Voltorb in 3 tackles, and we can move our way on to the first rival battle. I decided to give the rival Chikorita because the Chikorita line will resist electric type moves, but this ends up being a little bit moot because we're not going to have an electric type move for the entire time we're facing the rival. But the good news is the rival is still going to resist our hidden power type. After a bunch of tackles, we knock out Chikorita for the first time, and we can make our way into our first gym together. This is Faulkner's Flying type gym, and on paper this should be a very easy battle, but we have no electric type moves and Faulkner has a ground type move. I feel like we're playing some kind of inverse battle here as we knock out the Pidgey, and we are on to the Pidgeotto. We're going to start screaming bloody murder at this Pidgeotto, but it's all going to be in vain on this attempt. Our accuracy is now just about as low as it could ever be, and we're not going to be able to land our final set of tackles against this Pidgeotto. We end up taking our first reset, and it took 5 further attempts to be able to get anywhere close to defeating Faulkner. That is absolutely ludicrous when you think that we're running an electric type Pokemon and we are already struggling at a gym where we should have the type advantage. We absolutely have to go Screech here because that's going to be the only way we're going to consistently two-shot this Pidgeotto. We got it down eventually in a time of 15 minutes and 41 seconds, and we can move on to the second gym. This is Bugsy's Bug-type gym. He is going to lead with Metapod. We're going to use Sonic Boom on the Metapod because that's exactly 50% damage per turn, and then Kakuna's got slightly lower HP, so 2 Sonic Booms does the job as well. We're going to keep up the Sonic Boom against the Scyther because it's a guaranteed 3-shot. Fury Cutter does not connect enough times for Scyther to knock us out. We obtain the Hive Badge in 28 minutes and 48 seconds. But before we take on the second rival battle, we've got to deplete all of our power points. We've got to get rid of every single move in order to get through the second rival battle because we don't have anything to hit the Ghastly. It took around about 6.5 minutes just to give us a chance to fight the second rival battle, and this is no guarantee that we're going to be able to get through on our first try because we are relying on Struggle and Struggle alone. Struggle's a 2-shot against the Ghastly and we are onto the Bayleaf. We use Struggle and it does next to nothing. In addition to that, we are poisoned by the Bayleaf, so not only are we taking recoil damage every single time we hit the Bayleaf, we're also taking poison damage as well. We take yet another reset and we are back to square one. We get through the Ghastly in 2 shots once more and we are onto the Bayleaf again. Razor Leaf hits us less badly than Poison will, and we critical hit with Struggle to take it deep into the yellow, and then another pair of Struggles finishes off the Bayleaf. We're onto the Zubat now with 25 HP. Bite is going to take some HP away from us, but even though we got bitten twice, we are through the rival in a time of 36 minutes and 42 seconds. Other Pokemon by this point have defeated the Radio Tower. Let's move on to Whitney. She is our third gym leader together, and she leads with Clefairy. And thank heavens for Small Mercies, we now have Headbutt on the learn set. That is a very good move, and it should at least make some of these battles a little bit easier. With Ground and Normal on the learn set, we're able to hit pretty much everything for neutral damage in the Gen 2 challenge. We get through Whitney in a time of 42 minutes and 49 seconds courtesy of Screech and Headbutt, and then before we take on the rival for the third time, we're going to go into Mount Mortar. Somebody in the comments once accused me of cheating by going through Mount Mortar before getting Surf, but it's a perfectly legitimate strategy and we do it on a lot of challenges. But it's while we're in Mount Mortar we face Pokemaniac Miller, and thanks to his Nidoqueen and Nidoking we grow to level 30, and at level 30 Voltorb becomes Electrode. So we say goodbye to Voltorb and hello to Electrode, and we have the Pokemon now for the rest of the challenge. And with our newly evolved Electrode in hand, we'll take on the rival for the third time. We're going to start off with a Hidden Power Ground against his Haunter and knock it out in one shot. We'll do the same against the Magnemites because it's 4 times super effective, and then we'll swap to Headbutts for the Bayleaf. Raise Leaf is barely tickling us, and a critical hit knocks it out in 2, and now we get the option to learn Light Screen. We're going to say goodbye to Screech and hello to Light Screen, because I'm thinking that Red is an incredibly special heavy trainer, so if we're fortunate enough to keep Light Screen by this point, it will be incredibly handy. That's no guarantee though, we might need the slot for another move, but now that we have defeated the rival for the third time, we can make our way into Morty's gym. He is the Ghost and Poison Dual Type Spectacular Specialist, and he leads with Ghastly, and I decided to YOLO this a little bit. I wasn't confident that Hidden Power Ground was going to be a 2-shot on the Gengar, so we're going for Rollout instead, and boy howdy did it pay off. We get through all of Morty's Pokemon with no issue whatsoever, and we obtain the Fog Badge in 55 minutes and 6 seconds. Let's now take a trip across the ocean towards Cyanwood City where Chuck is waiting for us. He's our 5th gym leader together, a fighting type specialist who leads with Primeape that's already fainted. And now we're going to brute force against the Poliwrath. We're just going to keep headbutting, and thank goodness we broke through confusion there. We get through Poliwrath and defeat Chuck in a time of 57 minutes and 47 seconds. Just about 10 minutes later we end up at Price. He is our 6th gym leader together, an ice type specialist who leads with Seal. And once again we're YOLOing this battle, we're going for the rollout strategies. I really am not a big fan of rollout strategies, but they do pay off when they work, and that was exactly what happened in this particular battle. We get through Price with no issues whatsoever in 1 hour, 7 minutes and 24 seconds, and now we cannot unfortunately do this against Jasmine. She's a Steel type specialist, so we're going to have to rely on Hidden Power Ground. That does guarantee a one-shot on both of the Magnemites with an unnecessary critical hit on the second, and now we can try and take out the Steelix. Jasmine takes pity on us here and doesn't heal, and that means we're able to knock it out in 3 thanks to a critical hit, and we obtain the Mineral Badge in 1 hour, 8 minutes and 37 seconds. We'll now go down to the underground of Goldenrod's basement, where the rival is going to ambush us for the 4th time, and this time he's going to lead with Golbat, and once again we're going to try and YOLO this. It doesn't work out in our favour though when we get confused and we abort the mission and swap to Return instead. That does mean we are now free to select Hidden Power Ground against the Magnemites and knock it out in one shot, and we'll use Hidden Power Ground against the Haunter as well. The next Pokemon is Sneasel Pleasel, and we're going to use Return against that for a comfortable critical hit one shot, and the final Pokemon is Meganium. We'll stick with Return because that's the best we've got, and even though we end up being paralysed by Body Slam, it's too little too late for the rival. We get through him in a time of 1 hour, 16 minutes and 18 seconds, and we can now turn our focus to our final Johtonian gym leader. This is Claire, the leader of Blackthorn Gym, and she leads with Dragonair. And this is another time where we're going big or going home. We are going for the rollout strategies. It might not pay off on this attempt because we are paralysed, but we can still try our best. We end up getting through all of the Dragonair and we can see the Kingdra for the first time. Our rollout runs out at this point and I make the mistake of clicking rollout again. That wasn't the smartest play I've ever done, and it ends up in a reset. We're going to do the same strategy yet again at the start though, and hope that this time we don't get paralysed. If we don't get paralysed, we're in with a very good shout of actually knocking out all of Claire's Pokemon. We just have to avoid that stasis condition as long as we can. We're back onto the Kingdra, and now that we're not paralysed, I decide to set up a light screen. That's going to be that Surf's doing much less to us, and then we can start trying to chip away with Return. Claire uses her Hyper Potion to get Kingdra back to full health, but it's all too little too late. Thanks to the light screen, we get through Claire, and we obtain her badge in 1 hour, 25 minutes and 21 seconds. Goodness me, what a journey we've had so far through Johto. Let's see if the rival can throw one last spanner in the works before the league. This time he's going to lead with Sneasel Pleasel. We're not going to roll out against the rival this time, we've learnt our lesson from last time, and we're going to use Return and Hidden Power on turns 1 and 2 for 2 simple one-shots. We continue the one-shots on turn number 3 against the Haunter, and we'll swap back to Return for the Kadabra to take that out in 1 as well. The penultimate Pokemon is Meganium, and we're going to stick with Return. Razor Leaf's not going to hit us too hard, and it's just 3 returns to knock it out. The final Pokemon is Golbat because he sees that we're the electric type, but little does he know that we're going to have to stick with Return for that as well. We defeat the rival for the final time in 1 hour 30 minutes and 44 seconds, and now we're at the Pokemon League, so we'll heal up our Electrode whether we need to or not. And we'll say a big thank you to the HM friends. It's a big thank you to Kenya, Abra, Psyduck, merci to Paris. Thank you so much, all of you, for working overtime with Electrode. We'll buy our 4 full restores, which we'll either need or we won't. And now let's take a look at our stats going into the league. We are level 54 with 155 HP. We are holding the King's Rock with Return, Light Screen, Rollout and Hidden Power Ground. And in terms of our stats, we have just 95 in attack, 117 in defense, 128 in the specials, and 194 in speed. Those are the outer battle stats. We get a big buff in battle, as we'll see now, against Will. He is our first league member and he leads with Xatu. We're going to start off with a light screen, but a critical hit works its way through there, and then we end up being confused while we're in a rollout. The good news is it was a short confusion. The bad news is rollouts misses, so we have to build up again against the Jinx. Fortunately, we still had the light screen up, so Psychic barely tickled us, and now rollouts can start building in power. We get through the Executor, and then Xatu is going to be no issues whatsoever, and that brings us on to the final Slowbro. We're going to have to build up the rollouts from square one again, but this is going to be the quickest way to get through this Slowbro. We can just about tank a Psychic, we survive on 35, and we are through Will in time of 132.18. Let's move on to Koga. He's the Poison type specialist who leads with Ariados, and yet again we're taking full advantage of the fact that most of these league members have a significant weakness to the Rock type. Fortress actually throws a little bit of a spanner in the works here because it uses Protect to break our rollout, and that means it cannot build. A critical hit Hidden Power Ground finishes it off though, and we'll start our rollouts once more. We two-shot the Venomoth, and that brings us nicely onto the Muck. Rollout hits for quite significant damage and hits for the second try to knock it out, and we are onto the Crobats, but rollout misses once again, and that really did screw us over. It means we have to swap to Return, and when you combine Crobat's ridiculous amount of double teaming with the fact we low rolled and the fact we're toxic, we end up taking a reset, and that attempt was actually the best we had in a very long time. I was struggling and struggling and struggling for the Fortress. No matter what I seemed to do, this Fortress would always stop us in our tracks and then go boom to knock us out. We might have 135 in defense, but that is nowhere near enough to survive an explosion from Fortress. We eventually get through it on reset number 14, and we can start building up our rollouts once more. We get Toxic very early on in this attempt, so that does mean that Crobat can't hit us with Toxic again. Rollout actually hits it this time, and we eventually get through Koga in 136.06. Let's take on Bruno. He's the fighting type specialist who leads with Hitmontop. Bruno claims to be a fighting type specialist, but in this particular attempt, it really did feel like Bruno was a ground type specialist. He's got Dig on his Hitmontop, and he's got Earthquake on his Onix. And when you combine those two moves with the fact that Onix will set up a Sandstorm, you're really in for a bad time if you're running just an Electrode against Bruno. Because when you get to his Hitmonchan, you're going to be very badly damaged. Hitmonchan's going to hit you twice for guaranteed damage with a Muck Punch, and then Machamp can just finish you off with a Cross Chop. He didn't even bother with an unnecessary critical hit on that attempt. So we're back to square one. This time we're just starting with a Return against the Hitmontop. We're already down to 129 HP as the Onix comes out, but this time Onix just goes for Earthquake straight off the bat. That means at the very least we're not going to be taking chip damage for the rest of this battle. We end up getting swaggered by Hitmonlee, and that does mean our attack is now 220. That is a much more viable attack as long as we don't hit ourselves in confusion. But 220 in attack combined with a cross chop and hitting yourself in confusion means you're going to take a reset. I was getting a little bit desperate by this point. I just wanted to get through Bruno. I'd been there for around about 8 minutes at this point and nothing was seeming to work. So I decided to get rid of Rollout temporarily because we do have a TM for it, and we're going to replace it with Rain Dance instead. My thought process here was that we'd be able to stop the passive damage we take from Sandstorm. It didn't work out though, and I decided instead we're going to get rid of Rain Dance and we're just going to go for Swagger strats. If Swagger is good enough for Bruno, it's good enough for us. We're going to try and Swagger this Onyx instead. That's going to be our best way, I reckon, to get through this benighted Pokemon. Our Swagger connects, it hits itself in confusion, and then we critical hit with Hidden Power to knock it out and survive on 132 HP. We're not going to Swagger the Hitmonlee, instead we're going to take a little bit of a high jump kick to the face. We're still on 98 HP for the Hitmonchan, but that's going to get depleted twice courtesy of a pair of Mach Punches. We're only on 66 HP for the Machamp. I decide Swagger's the way to go again. It hits itself in confusion once, we hit it with Return, Cross Chop misses, and he gets himself caught in a little bit of a healing loop. He finally finishes himself off by hitting himself in confusion, and 9 minutes and 16 seconds later we're through Bruno in a time of 1 hour 45 minutes and 22 seconds. We can at least see how bad Karen is now, and thank heavens for small mercies. Umbreon's Sand Attack failed on turn 1, and that meant we got through that relatively painlessly. Stun Spore misses from Vileplume and she locks herself into Petal Dance, and that means we're not going to get status until the Gengar comes out. We are now on a timer for the rest of the battle because Gengar used Curse, but we have a super effective move for Houndoom in Hidden Power Ground. We do end up taking a little bit of Curse damage and Flamethrower takes us down to 30, and then Return is not powerful enough to one-shot the Murkrow. That means we have to take another reset and we're back to square one. This time we're replacing Hidden Power Ground with Rollout instead, because at least Rollout can build in power. We're swaggering the Umbreon to get started, and then we're going to start our Rollout. If we have really bad attack, we can just brute force it instead with Rollouts, because eventually Rollout will knock anything out. We get through the Vileplume and we're onto the Gengar. We don't get cursed this time because Gengar gets knocked out by a single Rollout, and we can start the process once more against the Houndoom. The worst that could have happened there is we'd have got burnt, but that really wouldn't have mattered. All of our Rollouts connect first try, and that means we are through Karen in a time of 1 hour 49 minutes and 18 seconds. And that means there's only one obstacle between us and the Hall of Fame. It's time for Lance, the liar with the flyers, and he leads with Gyarados. Lance's inability to tell the truth might prove to be incredibly fortuitous for us, because that means every single one of his Pokemon is going to be weak to the Rock type. That means we can knock out the Gyarados with a few Rollouts, but then Rollout misses against the first level 47 Dragonite. We end up getting Thunder Waved and I take an early reset. Let's try that once more though. We're going to swagger the Gyarados to try and make it hit itself in confusion. We'll set up a light screen so we don't get hit very hard by any of its moves, and then we'll start on the Rollout. Gyarados knocks itself out with confusion, and that means our Rollout counter was 1. That means Rollout isn't strong enough to one-shot the first level 47 Dragonite, but it is more than capable of one-shotting the second level 47 Dragonite. Rollout takes a huge amount of damage off the level 50 Dragonite, and that just leaves Aerodactyl and Charizard left to go. We outspeed the Aerodactyl and it's a 3 shots with Rollout. That means that Charizard is going to take a 4-time super effective 4-count Rollout to the face, and we have defeated Lance in a time of 1 hour 50 minutes and 48 seconds, and our final Hall of Fame time is 1 hour 51 minutes and 4 seconds. Electrode has been incredibly hard to work with in this first half, but there's still another 8 gym badges plus the red fight left to come, so don't you dare go anywhere, because Kanto is next. And we rejoin the action here in Vermilion City, where the first thing we do in Kanto is the last thing we do in Johto. We're going to get another rare candy, this time from the chairman of the Pokemon fan club. And with that rare candy safely tucked away in our bag for another run, you may have noticed we're not facing Surge. For that matter, we're not facing any gym leader at all. And that's because something happened on this particular challenge that has never happened to me before. I couldn't face the idea of doing another battle alongside Electrode. That first half of the challenge really did break something inside of me. I had an absolute nightmare crisis of confidence while I was doing the Kanto section, and I started questioning whether I'd played Electrode right, what I could have done differently, and if there was anything I could have done to change any of the outcomes of any of the battles. So I went on a little bit of a thinking walk. We went all the way around Kanto doing all the required storyline bits, and I bumped into 3-Drill. 3-Drill gave me a little bit of a boost of confidence. There's something about this trainer that really does uplift my spirits. We knock out all 3 of his B-Drill and he leaves me with some advice. He reminds me that the point of the challenges is not to get the best possible time with each Pokemon, it's to see how intuitive they would be if they're your starter Pokemon, and every time that matters is the time you get on the day. So instead of procrastinating and leaving this challenge for another few months, I decide our best shot is to start with Blaine. And the reason I start with Blaine is because he is the only gym leader you cannot fly to, and if we've done this amount of movement already, we've got every single other city opened up. So we'll take on Blaine, we'll move to Janine, and then we'll pick off all the other Cantonian gym leaders in a fairly random order. It will just be in the order that I think at the time is going to be the best to knock them out the quickest. And now, while the gym leaders are playing in the background, of course I'm going to sit down and carry on this conversation with all you lovely people. If you don't want to stick around for the Kanto chat, the blue fight begins at 23 minutes and 32 seconds. For everybody else, let's sit down, gather round, and we'll talk a little bit more in detail about these moments you get when you're challenge running, where your confidence just gets completely knocked out. This is our 93rd challenge together here on the main leaderboard, and there hasn't been a Pokemon quite like Electrode that has really worn me down this much. With Pokemon like Makago and Shuckle, you go in knowing it's going to be terrible, but Electrode does not have terrible stats. 80 in special attack is nothing to be sniffed at, but because we went in with Hidden Power Ground, we were working with just 50 base attack for the entire Johto part of the run, all the way up to the end of the Pokemon League. In hindsight, I have been wondering if I should have gone for something like Hidden Power Ice, or maybe Hidden Power Fire instead, and just tolerated some of the worst battles that you would have got not having Hidden Power Ground. But it was all a little bit too late because I'd already committed to the challenge at this point. And one of the big things I have been worried about is what you lovely people would think about this gameplay, because I am very proud of my skills in Pokemon Crystal. I think I've got the ability to get most Pokemon over the line in a challenge, but Electrode really is something else. It isn't intuitive in the slightest. You start off terribly at Falkner because of the mud slaps, then you get a brief respite at Bugsy because he's fairly easy with Sonic Boom, before you then have to deplete all of your power points to take on the second rival battle. And that is a huge mountain to climb in the first 2 and a bit badges of any challenge, and it really does just sap away at your mental energy for the rest of the challenge. I'll be very blunt here. By the time we defeated Whitney, I'd already mentally checked out of this one, and that meant any consideration of restarting the challenge and picking a special hidden power type was out of the window. I really didn't want to have to do the Falkner battle or the PP struggle again, because both of those take so much time and energy away from what you're focusing on, because instead of doing something where you're fitting a puzzle piece together, you're just mindlessly clicking A and either hoping for the best at Falkner, or you're just depleting your power points so you have a chance to defeat the second rival battle. And there is only one other challenge I have run in the entire time here on the channel that has felt even remotely close to that, and that was the Raichu run where we started as Pichu. That was just about as draining, but for completely different reasons, because we actually had a half-decent learn set on that Pichu. We had an electric type move, but it just would not evolve for love nor money. That was a challenge, if you don't remember, where we ended up having to go all the way back to New Bark Town to exploit that one mechanic that's only available in Pokemon Crystal, where you're able to double the amount your friendship will increase every time you level up in the place you get your Pokemon. But that meant we were having to rely on the old rod and beating up a hell of a lot of Magikarp to evolve that Pichu. And then also, I'm not gonna lie, I'm worried about the comments section for this particular challenge. I remember what the comments section was like for the Pichu, with plenty of people criticising because I couldn't evolve it early, even though I did the best I could under the circumstances, and I do worry something similar is going to happen in this particular comments section. However, I trust you all, which is why this challenge and voiceover are going live, and now we can rejoin the action for the final gym battle against against Blue. Blue is of course a mixed type specialist and he's going to lead with Pidgeot. We've got Thunderbolts for the Pidgeot and that's a very comfortable one-shot, and so he sends out Rhydon. Rhydon's a little bit of a thorn in our side. You may see we've got Hidden Power ground back. That was thanks to the Celadon department store. So we'll start using that against the Rhydon, but he switches out as soon as he sets up the Sandstorm. That means he's now got a Gyarados in play. We use Thunderbolts because it's 4 times super effective and we knock it out. The Sandstorm is continuing to deplete our health though. We low roll against the Rhydon and we get knocked out by Earthquake. I decide at this point to teach Electrode how to swear. I think that's going to give us a good chance of getting through a little bit easier because we're going to be able to buff our attack. We can also use Curse a couple of times here and we'll still outspeed everything against Blue. That is one of the big benefits of having a very fast Pokemon. It means that Curse isn't as much of a hindrance as it otherwise would have been. However, we weren't even able to get past the Pidgeot on that attempt, and we end up taking a reset and I decide to try and get a few more levels. We're going to get ourselves 3 levels courtesy of a lot of random trainers across the Kanto region, and you may notice that the resets counter has increased a little bit while we're doing this. This is because I tried at the intermediate levels, but we still made no forward progress whatsoever. So we are rejoining Blue at level 69, and you may notice that we also have Return back on the Learn set. I completed the side quest with the copycats to get the Magnet Train active, and then we took the Magnet Train all the way back to Johto, and because we changed the timer already to get Thunderbolts from the Saturday move tutor, the time could easily tick back over to Sunday, and that meant we were able to get another Return TM. That's something you can only do in Generation 2. In Generation 4, I believe you're limited to just 1 Return TM. And those extra 3 levels combined with returns seems to have made all the difference. We knock out the Rhydon and we are on to the Alakazam. We do take some damage from the Sandstorm, but that guaranteed one-shot range on Alakazam. Now we're on to Executor, and the Sandstorm just about subsides, but that Sandstorm damage meant that even with Reflect Up, we were able to knock it out in just one shot. We get Flamethrowered by Arcanine, but we take it deep into the yellow on turn 1, and that means he is caught in a healing loop. As soon as the Reflect fades, there's nothing Blue can do. Even a critical hit Flamethrower cannot knock us out, and we defeat Blue eventually in a time of 2 hours, 27 minutes and 57 seconds. And with that, there's only one more trainer left to go. This is Red. He is a mixed type trainer. He is the final trainer of the challenge, and he leads with Pikachu. And just like in so many battles we've had in this challenge, we're going to YOLO this. We'll start off with a single curse and then we'll get to rolling out. Pikachu's Thunder misses, but our rollout missed as well. Pikachu's accuracy is somehow worse than ours though, and we knock it out in a couple of hits. We're on to the Espeon, but rollout isn't built up enough. We take a huge amount of damage from Psychic, but we knock it out in 2. Here comes the Snorlax, rollout connects, and it is a one-hit wonder. There aren't many things Electrode's been able to do correctly, but rolling out and one-shotting Snorlax is absolutely one of those things. What we're doing against the Venusaur here may seem counterintuitive, but my idea was to paralyze it, because that meant that Venusaur then had a very low chance to hit us. Rollout missed at the absolute worst opportunity though. We ended up taking a Solar Beam to the face, and we have to take yet another reset. I use the first 3 rare candies here, and we start the process all over again. This time I'm not really caring about our speed. We're probably not going to outspeed anything, so the one thing Electrode's got going for it has suddenly disappeared. But we need as much power as we can possibly get behind our rollouts. We get through the Espeon and we're back onto the Snorlax. And once again, it is a one-shot against the Snorlax. We're back onto the Venusaur now as it takes in Sunlight. Rollout connects first turn, and we have a 5-turn rollout to knock it out. Rollout then finishes at the perfect time because we can swap to Thunderbolts for the Charizard and the Blastoise. It's going to be a simple one-shot on Charizard. It's also going to be the same against the Blastoise. We knock it out with a very unnecessary critical hit, and we have defeated Red, and the challenge is over in 2 hours, 32 minutes and 12 seconds. Goodness me, what a struggle that one was. We ended up in 88th place, so just about avoiding a dreaded page 4 finish, but still page 3 is incredibly low for the Electrode. That does push Corsair down into the page 4 drop zone, and on page 4 we now have a terrific trio of Sunflora, Magcargo and Shuckle. Over on page 2 there's absolutely no change, with Rapidash heading it up and Jinx in the page 2 drop zone, and that 88th place finish also means we're going to have no change at the top of the leaderboard. It's Ho-Oh in first, Pidgeot in second and Girafarig in third. Kangaskhan had better watch out there, perilously close to page 2 in the page 1 drop zone. But with that, we are done. So if you have enjoyed this run despite the whinging, then please do leave a like on it. If you want to see more runs, most of them better than this, then click the subscribe button. And until next time, when we're getting a bit of a respite with Dodrio's redo in Pokemon Crystal, I'll say thank you all so much for watching. It's been a pleasure, and I'll see you all very, very soon.